first met Dennis Brutus well over 20 years ago when he had escaped from South Africa after being wounded and incarcerated on Robben Island. He came to the United States as a hero in the struggle against apartheid, as a brilliant poet and writer.
I spent time in the maximum security section with people like Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Govan Mbeki, Neville Alexander.
He inspires new generations of young people against the tyranny of racialized oppression and capitalist injustice. A true comrade and a true friend.
Stubborn hope. Endurance is a passive quality, transforms nothing, contests nothing, can change no state to something better, and is worthy of no high esteem. And so it seems to me my own persistence deserves, if not contempt, impatience. Yet somewhere lingers the stubborn hope. Thus to endure can be a kind of fight, preserve some value, assert some faith, and even have a kind of worth. This is the Tamil Vedic Hall on Carlisle Street, which for me is very important because it's where the whole campaign against apartheid sport took off. Wherever the Springbok rugby team with its racism traveled, we were there to protest that racism. Now, fortunately, we have the WTO, we have the World Bank, we have the IMF, we have the G7.
Sort of like a trek along.
We estimate that there were about 15,000, but that's just a guess. And of course the real emphasis, although this may not have come over in some of the visual material, emphasis of the march is on two things: anti-globalization, anti-privatization. I should add that there are very many angry people here, so it's really not predictable what the next stage will be. Collision right here in Durban, which in microcosm is the collision that is taking place globally. On the one hand, you have grassroots people's interests, and on the other hand, you have corporate interests. The two are in confrontation here in Durban. This is a new form of colonization, that this is really countries being bound by the chains of debt instead of the chains of slavery as in the old days.
Since 94, I'm not really interested in politics anymore, and it gets a bit boring, so I'm more interested in Dennis the poet, and Dennis the man, especially when he sort of opens up a bit. But I think he's a master of carnival. That's what I call him. If I ever get a student to write a thesis on Dennis, it would be about carnival, because he loves riots and protest marches and things like that. That's his field. He wants to be in charge of those things all over the world.
Where the G8 summit was taking place, you had this tremendous people cheering, singing, marching with banners and bangles and tambourines and drums, kind of carnival atmosphere for miles, all these people.
I suppose sometimes he gets lonely and traveling the whole world and all the big hotels and places, and then the more human side comes out, Oh, yeah, I don't know, he must be quite a lonely man, because he sits there at the Four Seasons, living from one sort of date to the next, or the one meeting to the next meeting around politics. It must be deadening. It must kill the man. I don't know how he survives it.
That's the jungle of my papers. Actually, it makes sense, because you'll see the jungle is subdivided into little piles, and each pile over there is dealing with a specific area. So I can go to any one of them and I'll know what's in it.
It's a pile.
This is Genoa, for instance. Over there next to the bed is what I'm currently working on before I go to sleep. So it's right beside my bed. Then the other pile, this one is the one I've just finished. And so they're all divided. This is marvelous. I must say something about it. Let me get the book. This is marvelous. I'm delighted that you raised the question. Where do we have the book?
It's on the left-hand side.
This is marvelous. African Renaissance, written by Mahoba, prologue by Thabo Mbeki. That's great. So what's the book about? And who funded the book? Most importantly, who funded the book? And who are the people writing messages of support? This is absolutely perfect. Number one, a message from Denel. And if you want to know who Denel is, they are the big arms corporation in South Africa, selling arms all over Africa to both sides. When there's a civil war, they sell to both sides. Sponsors, Denel. Who's next? Oh, wonderful. NGen. NGen sends a message of its commitment to the African Renaissance. Marvelous. Who's next? ESCOM supports the African Renaissance. ESCOM is making millions out of it and expecting to make more millions. And these are the guys sponsoring the African Renaissance. Can you believe it? Who's the next sponsor? Message from the Standard Bank. Big money, which is now being moved out of South Africa to offshore deposits, but that's Standard Bank. Next one, which is their partner actually, the Standard Corporate and Merchant Bank is supporting the African Renaissance. Any more? Sonels and the SCMB, Corporate Finance Division. Nampower in Namibia, Zimbabwe Consortium, Maputo Development Corridor going into Mozambique, Ilovo Sugar. But guess what? This is a Renaissance which is not about the African people. This is about the corporations who are going to fund it, and then they're going to profit from it, and they're going to run it. So when there, Thabo Mbeki talks about an African Renaissance, Telkom is there as well. Just one more that's being privatized. So we're talking about an African Renaissance, if we are to judge from this book, where Africa's assets in South Africa and later in the rest of Africa will be sold off, privatized, corporatized, so that profits become more important than people. We have a slogan which says, another world, a different world is possible. We do not need to lie down and accept a world dominated by the corporations, dominated by the notion that profits are more important than people.